He says, "Hey son, would you like to have this bottle of wine?" And I said yes, but 12 years old, I didn't know how to get it open. I am Mike McDonald. I'd like to say I'm the owner and winemaker of Vision Cellars, but I'm married to Miss Lil, so I just make the wine for Miss Lil. Well, it's kind of interesting how I got into wine. I grew up 8 or 9 miles south of Dallas, Texas. I grew up way in the woods, way in the country. I consider myself as an old organic kind of a guy, growing back up in there, squirrel eating type of a guy. At 12 years old, there used to be a bunch of hunters used to come down in these woods and go hunting with my grandfather and drink my father's moonshine. So one of them used to drink Burgundy, and these guys would give him a hard time about drinking that Burgundy wine, blah, 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 because they was drinking corn whiskey. So one day he said to me, he says, "Hey son, would you like to have this bottle of wine?" And I said yes, but 12 years old, I didn't know how to get it open, but I finally dug out, the cork out of it, and I took a stick and shoved off in there, and I tasted it. You don't have to worry about Child Protective Service because they didn't have anything back off in those woods to do that anyway. But at any rate, I tasted it, and I drank a half a bottle of that wine that day. And it tasted pretty good. From that point on, all I talked about was I wanted to be a winemaker. Fast forward through high school, my coach says to me, "If you want to make wine, you need to move to California." That's why I moved from California, from Texas to California. I grew up about 8 or 9 miles south of Dallas, Texas, around Palestine, Waco, in that area. So getting to California, it's a really a tough time getting to know winemakers, and I didn't know who they were, what they do, any of that thing. So I started hanging around up in Mendocino County, which is about 160 miles north of San Francisco. Met a guy by the name of John Parducci up there, and John wouldn't give me the time of day, but that was okay because some kid coming out of Texas talking about you want to make wine. But I kept going back up there, and he started talking to me, telling me stuff. But really what kicked me off into this wine business is I met a family over in Napa Valley, a family called the Wagner family, and I hung out with Mr. Wagner probably for 9 months, and I didn't know who he was. He didn't say anything about who he was. And one day the tasting room manager came out and said, "Hey, why are you always out here bothering Mr. Wagner?" And I said, "Well, what do you mean, that old guy out there?" He goes, "That ain't just some old guy, that's Mr. Wagner. He owned this place." I had no idea for 9 months I'd been hanging out with the owners of Camus Vineyard. Fast forward a little bit farther, I've known the Wagner family for around 31 years. 15 years or so after hanging out with them, Mr. Wagner said to me, "Son, you ought to be in the wine business." And I thought, well, I'd like to, but I don't have that kind of money. He goes, "Don't worry about it, we'll take care of you." So 17 years ago, my wife, Miss Lil, we started Vision Cellars. And to this day, I'm the only non-family member that's allowed to make wine at Camus. All my wines are crafted at Camus Vineyard in Rutherford, California. I make them all myself. We own some vineyards in Sonoma County, which is about 110 miles north of San Francisco, Russian River Valley. We own Miss Lil's vineyard there, and we do craft wine from that vineyard. That's basically how I got into the wine business. Pinot Noir is what we do. Folks often ask me, why do you choose or select the toughest type of grape? Well, number one, if you in California, Northern California, and you want to make Cabernet, unless you come out of Napa Valley, folks normally think it's not that good. So I thought if I could craft a great Pinot Noir, because Burgundy is the same grape, that if I could craft a good Pinot Noir, then I think I could play with the big dogs. I'm pretty competitive in everything that I do, so I wanted to be good. I wanted to make a mark for doing what I was doing. And at the time, there was a winery in California called William & Sullivan that I thought was doing a great job, And then I also thought Sanford down in the Santa Barbara. Those were the only two great Pinot producers, that I thought was really good. And I thought, if I could make a great Pinot Noir, then I could compete. That's why they were selected. I had no idea all the crazy things about that grape even exist. But I'm a pretty fast learner, so I learned a lot about it. Well, it's a real challenging thing because if you think normally about the clones of a Pinot Noir grape, the challenge of growing the grapes, making the wine, and selecting the right yeast, and keeping the temperature at a certain control. To start off with, you have to really know your soil condition and really match your soil condition with your rootstock. Rootstock, how much water you have, the soil condition, how much you want to grow per ton. Like at Sauvignon Blanc, it doesn't care. It's like a weed. You can just overload it with tons and tons of fruit. Now, in the Chardonnay world, let's say you have about 50, 60 plus clones someplace in there, different varieties, different clones. Same with the Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay and Cabernet Sauvignon. You have about 50 or 60 there. But in the Pinot world, you have about 11,000 clones. These things just mutate. You start out, example, with a 667 or a 777 clone. And you may have one side of the road, you may have this clone planted over there, the other side, another different clone, and they'll completely go different flavors. Then you get into, the pruning process of it. You talk to different Pinot growers, and, they have different methods of, pruning. And I just like a little bit of exposure to my fruit. It's really consistent with leaf picking. In other words, if you get more sun on the east side, you may want to leave a little bit more leaves on that. You don't get enough on the west side of the vine, you may want to pull some of that off. And so it's a constant juggle of trying to get the ripeness and the even ripeness on the fruit itself. Then
Isn't that challenging?
Yeah, it's really challenging. And like I said, a lot of us have different thoughts about it, but I think we all come into an agreement. That's why we are able to craft better Pinot Noir in California. It used to be, like I said, Bird William and was the king of it. But now got a lot of folks making great Pinot Noir. In fact, even here in the state of Ohio, their Pinot program is doing pretty good. I gave a big lecture at Ohio State several years ago on the crafting of Pinot Noir, and I came back and tasted what some of the things that they made adjustments in, and they're doing pretty good. But it's a real tough grape to grow. There's a whole bunch of choices of selections of yeast that you use to ferment, your fruit, and that makes a big difference in the end result of the flavor. The type of yeast you use help determine the flavor you get on the end, and then you have the other extreme of that. Barrel selections is really, really critical because in my mind, a Pinot Noir should be treated like a white grape. It's a delicate thing. You can get too much wood on it, or you can get too much alcohol in it. I'm not saying that if you like a high alcohol Pinot Noir, you shouldn't buy them, but I'm just thinking that 13.5, 14.5 in there is ideal alcohol level for a Pinot Noir. Now, with that said, sometimes your vineyard, the fruit is just not there. At a 25 bricks with equivalent to a 13.8 or 13.9 Pinot Noir, and so you may have to let the alcohol get up a little bit higher because it's a little bit riper. So the riper it is, the higher the sugar content, and the higher the sugar content is, how the alcohol is going to be in the finished product. So it's kind of a up and down thing with that grape in that sense as well. From my mind, what makes California fruit is a little bit more consistent is that we've kind of figured out what type of soil condition, what type of weather patterns that you have is the best area to grow Pinot Noir. And we found that, nice cooler areas, cool at night, maybe a little bit warmer during the day, 80s and not too high into the hundreds and stuff like that. Well, it's more ideal for drinking and making Pinot Noir because you don't get the over ripe fruit all the time, unless you purposely trying to do that. So I think that we're a little bit more consistent in it. We do have a tendency to get a little bit more alcohol, you say, than say Burgundy or say Oregon. But I think when you look at Northern California, I think we're pretty consistent at finding good location to grow Pinot Noir, and I think that's really the determinant factor. Burgundy, they don't get a lot of heat in the Burgundy area, so your alcohol normally is not as high, and the wine can last a lot longer. Of course, we make our wines in California so that they'll be able to be consumed a little bit earlier. Now, when I get into California itself, and I think about Corners, I think about the more dense, more, maybe a little bit more heartier of Pinot Noir, because you don't have a lot of, hot weather, in that Corners area. It's right close to the water. You get over in this Sonoma County, where I live, Sonoma County, Russian River Valley, ideal for Pinot Noir. Our property is maybe 3/4 of a mile from the Russian River, which, is nice and cool in there. When the ocean itself is about 45 miles away. It's nice and cool in that Russian River Valley where you get up in the 80s. Once in a while you get up, 95 or so like that. But normally it's in the 80s, and at night it kind of cools down. So you get more of a cherry, a real ripe plum kind of a fruit from that area. Not as dark as it is in Corners. And then when you get down to Monterey County, to the St. Lucia Highlands, particularly upper part of the St. Lucia Highlands, around Soledad, in that area. I purchased fruit from the Garys and Rosella's Vineyard and the Los Artures Vineyard, which is owned by the Wagner family. And I tell you, that's an ideal area itself for growing a Pinot Noir. You still get that little dense kind of a fruit there. The acid can be high in that area, a lot higher than it is in, say, Russian River Valley, Sonoma County, or Corners, or in Napa area, and part of it is in Sonoma. But the acids can be pretty high down in the St. Lucia Highlands in Monterey County. And I think that when you get down past, Santa Barbara in that area, now you're picking up a little bit more, a little bit more riper fruit, a little bit lighter fruit, and you can kind of get more of what I call that candy apple, kind of a bright, sweet, kind of a, real cherry, real, not wild cherry, but real bean, kind of a light cherry kind of a wine. And with maybe a little bit of berries and the typical raspberry flavors down there. I don't think that that's a problem with that, but I think we're consistent in all the areas that, we're making Pinot Noir in. We're finding out that the temperature in itself in those areas makes a big difference in how Pinot Noir should be coming out, and how the trellising of the vines, and how you can actually, get the exposure to the grape, to the sunshine that you mean. That we can't change the sun, but we can change how the sun hit the fruit itself by the way we prune it, by we go out and pick the leaves off of it. So I think overall, Californians learn how to farm is the bottom line. Now Oregon, a lot of folks in Oregon, they kind of maybe lived or made wine in California, so they've taken a lot of the practice up there that we had. But they started out in Oregon using the fruit from that area and not trying to make it, a California Pinot Noir style. They started out really light because they didn't get a lot of sun, a lot of heat, so they were able to just make a wine from the area, and it was so different than California. And I can remember when I used to go up there and I taste those Pinot Noirs, and I used to think, what do these guys think they're doing? Because I was adjusted to, drinking a little bit different style of Pinot Noir. But I think overall they're doing a great job, and making their Pinot Noirs up in Oregon and in parts of Washington as well now. What does wine mean to me? Wine mean to me friendship, enjoyment, socialization. It means a lot to me. And the reason that I say that is because I've met so many wonderful folks through this wine business and having a glass of wine. I just think that folks who drink wine, they're very interesting individuals, because you have something in common right away. You can kind of talk to them about it. It no matter if you don't even like the variety of wine. You may like, Pinot Noir, you may like Cabs, you may like Zen, whatever it is, you got something in common. And I find, the reason that I said it's socialization, friendship thing, over the years that I've been, traveling with Miss Lil around the country, doing wine events, wine tasting, I've met so many folks. I probably have come to visit our wine or visit our vineyard every year. Probably have over 1,000 people just stop by to see me that I met from all over the United States. And I think that I feel really good that I meet these folks and give them my card and says, come out to visit us, we'll make you lunch or something, and they show up. That's a good feeling, because I wouldn't have never met the folks. So the big socialization, the big sharing of knowledge from the knowledge I get from folks like yourself, doing wine tasting events, and I think we're going to do a wine tasting maybe here later on today. You come in and meet these folks and they come out and see you. Or when I come back, here to Ohio, I go to these events. I had a big event every night I've been here. I've been here like four nights. And it's kind of like, it's somewhat like an old family reunion meeting. They come back time and time to see you. And you may not remember all of their names, but they remember who you are. And you just get to see them and talk to them. So I don't know what I do to trade that socialization off for someone else. And let's face it, I enjoy wine. Well, what we do is we don't make a lot of changes in the vineyard, especially the quality of the vineyard. When you taste Vision Cellars Pinot Noir, we make 7 of them, and we don't change anything in that, in the sense that we don't take a little bit of this vineyard to add to this vineyard to make that better. We want to do the expression of the dirt/soil from that particular location. And so we try to get these wines in the middle of the road so that we don't have a problem with the food pairing of it. And many times I've done a lot of dinners throughout the United States, and I've noticed that a lot of chefs, they pair different things with our wine. Last night we were at a country club, and they actually done some type of custard with one of our Pinot Noirs. And I looked at it at first and I thought, I'm not sure about this. But what was the kicker on it, they had a little bacon on the side of it. And it was really a great pairing. So, and then I've had occasions where I never would have done this, by the way, but it's a constant thing that I do now. I was at a restaurant, another country club, and they served oysters on the half shell with one of my Pinot Noirs. It was a little bit robust Pinot Noir, and I thought, whoa, what are you guys thinking about here? One of the best pairings that I had, as far as with oysters. So Miss Lil and I will often now go out and order a dozen of those small little oysters and have a bottle of Pinot Noir. So Vision Cellars Pinot Noirs, we craft those, whether you're doing grilled vegetables, whether you're doing grilled chicken, grilled beef. We have one of those wines in our bag that will fit that occasion, whether it's spicy or not. Because a lot of folks will call me up and says, Mac, I'm having duck, just for an example. and I'll say, well, how are you preparing it? If they're from a certain area, like Texas, for example. One of the first questions is, what part of Texas you live in? Because I know if you live in the northern part around Dallas and area, you're not going to have it as spicy. If you live down in San Antonio area, Austin area, you may be a little bit more spicy with your food. So I may recommend a different one of my Pinot Noirs. And so I think we want to make them all to go across the board with food, whether you're having sushi or whatever you're having. But then if you get down to maybe touching with different spices, I may recommend something different. So, but I think all of us in the Pinot producers, we are conscientious that we want all of these Pinot Noirs to be able to fit with all types of food. And I think we've accomplished that very well. Well, I would say, try blindly. I don't necessarily say, just look at price points on anything. I think you get together with some friends, or if you have, a wine tasting opportunity, to come in and taste them, because you may say, well, you know what, I don't like Vision Cellars Pinot Noir. That doesn't mean you don't like Pinot Noir. You just don't like Vision Cellars Pinot Noir. It's like, prime rib. You like prime rib, but you say, I'll make your prime rib, and you say, well, I don't like that. Well, you don't like the way I prepare it, but that doesn't mean you don't really like it someplace else. I think wine can be the same way. You need to be able to taste a variety of wines and not be so concerned about the price points of them, just the enjoyment. Then you find out the flavors you like. You find out the winemakers that you like, because we have a tendency to do little different things with our wine, just like you do if you go out to a restaurant. You may go to one restaurant and one store and you buy fish. Say you go to a market, you buy fish. Well, you may not like buying fish from that market, but you like buying it from the other ones. It's kind of the same thing, I think, in wine as to compare it. So I would say, definitely, try a variety of tasting. When there's an opportunity to taste Pinot Noirs, go out and taste them from different producers. And then that's where you find your own style that you like it. But never stop experimenting. Never, ever stop experimenting. My pet peeve really about this is, I have this thing about all of this stuff where, people write about wine and, all these wine magazines, and they tell you what you do. And by the way, we get great press on all of our wines. And I always have this bottom line about this wine stuff, no matter what the press says about it. Our wines have been served at the White House since President Clinton administration. Under President George W. Bush administration, our wines was served there at least 3 times, and 3 times a year in all the 8 years he was there, which is phenomenal for a small winery like Vision Cellars. And I say, with all of that stuff said, the bottom line, you either like the crap or you don't. I totally believe that, and no matter what scores say, you do that. I'd like for folks to really understand you are the knowledgeable person about what you're drinking. And it's okay to get opinions about stuff, but you make your own decisions about what you like. And I see it's leaning towards that. More and more folks are saying, I like this. Or they'll say, I wouldn't have ever tried a Pinot Noir. I just like for folks to do that. The other part of this whole thing I like to see folks say, if I'm having fried catfish and I want to have an 18.5 Zinfandel with it, by God, it's my money. I ought to be able to have whatever I want with the food that I want. Now, that doesn't mean that certain pairing wouldn't go better. I'm not going to say that wouldn't, but that may be in my own mind that I think that go better. But for the person who's a consumer that's coming in to buy a bottle of wine or a case of wine, if they want to have one thing with their dinner, that's perfectly okay. And I'm not, saying that, again, that it wouldn't be better to have another wine with it, but hey, my taste bud's not the same as yours, maybe. So that's what I like to see, folks do and appreciate, and go out on a limb, start enjoying what they like with the food that they have. Personally, I drink more wine without food than I do with food, because it's relaxing, it's enjoyable for me, and I like the flavor of wine. I'm not stuck on Pinot Noir. I try a variety of wine, cabs, and I try, Sauvignon Blanc, Viogniers. I try all types of stuff because I want to try all the different flavors of wine. Just explore this wonderful world of wine.